Look away from the shiny objects, ladies and gentlemen. Look here at the Sudan. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is another declaration of truth from your host, Terry A. Hurlbut. Events in the United States, and more particularly in the United States mainstream media, have distracted the people from another global hotspot, the Sudan. Two generals, each with his own army, are fighting for control in and of that country. But what began as yet another typical African warlord's feud yesterday became a flashpoint in the campaign by the World Health Organization, or WHO, for global governance. One of the two fighting factions has seized the National Public Health Laboratory, and that laboratory contains samples of some of the deadliest viruses known to medical science, at least says WHO. This could actually be WHO's excuse to declare yet another pandemic ahead of their scheduled pandemic treaty vote. And I do not know a single other YouTuber who understands what is happening or why, although I have some friends on Twitter, including one who reminded me of some recent history. I'm going to lay all that history out for you and bring you up to speed on yet another rebellion in Eastern Africa. But first, I do want to shout out to the prime sponsor of this channel, which is Conservative News and Views. Link in the description. Be sure to check out the awesome CNAV store. Scroll down near the bottom for that link. Lots of great merchandise there, especially this t-shirt that I have chosen for today, which quotes Klaus Schwab as saying, "We have ways." We have ways. Once again, I see that man scheming and plotting. All he needs is a white cat resting on his lap, letting him stroke, 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 while he lays plots that can ruin or end millions of lives at a, well, stroke. One more thing. If you like what you're about to hear, you can like this video. You can also click the bell icon to get a notice every time I come out with a new one. In fact, do you see the new icon, the heart shape with the US dollar sign in it? That's the super thanks icon. If you really want to keep these videos coming, click that and leave me a tip. Any currency will do, so long as it's legal tender. First, what is happening in the Sudan? Yesterday, Dr. Steve Turley offered his take on doings in the Sudan. I have a link to his video, which he titled, "Here's What's Really Happening in Sudan." Triple screamers. Sudan is famous for centuries of conflict between largely Islamic independence movements and the British Empire. Indeed, Anglo-Egyptian Sudan. Anglo-Egyptian Sudan lasted until 1956. And in 1956, Sudan became independent, and since 1983, Islamic. Secularism became the rule in 2020, but stability did not come with secularism. On April 15, 2023, General Mohammed Hamdan Daglo rebelled against his nominal superior, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. General Daglo commands a paramilitary rapid response force, called simply the RSF, likely more mobile than the regulars that General al-Burhan commands. Fighting has raged on and on, off and on ever since. Last week, the two sides agreed to a ceasefire that lasted all of 24 hours. I have links to 3 tweets about that, or the situation just before it. One is a statement from Secretary of State Blinken, for what that's worth. He was boasting of how he negotiated that ceasefire. Fighting has resumed, and several countries find themselves unable to evacuate their citizens. I have a link in the description to a tweet from the U.S. Embassy in Khartoum. 6 paragraphs of useless prose. Quote, "Unequivocally condemn in the strongest terms the continuing violence, including attacks directed against civilians, diplomats and humanitarian actors between the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces, and call on the parties to end hostilities immediately and without precondition," close quote, and blah, 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 babble, babble, babble for 5 paragraphs more. More recently, U.S. forces evacuated the embassy staff from Khartoum, the capital, but they have made no effort to evacuate 60,000 U.S. citizens scattered all over the Sudan. I have links to those tweets about that, to 3 tweets about that, and then another tweet showing that other countries are evacuating their nationals, and quite nicely too. I regret to say that 1 U.S. citizen at least has already turned up dead in the fighting. For everyone else, the word is shelter in place, unprecedented and unacceptable, and I'll get to that. Dr. Steve Turley, in his video yesterday, suggested that the world was merely seeing another flashpoint in the larger rebellion against the global elite empire. But he said nothing about the escalation that now brings WHO into the fighting, or at least this latest development gives them an excuse to mix in. One of the 2 factions, nobody seems to know which, has seized the National Public Health Laboratory. Apparently, its technical staff could not secure the biological materials and samples that the lab carries. 5 tweets in the description about that little episode from the Spectator Index, Zero Hedge, Reuters, the Gateway Pundit, and an outfit calling itself Addis Standard. Dr. Nina Saeed Abid told One American News Network, and again, I quote, "There is a huge biological risk associated with the occupation of the Central Public Health Lab by one of the fighting parties. This is the main concern. No accessibility to the lab technicians to go to the lab and safely contain the biological material and substances available," unquote, Dr. Abid. No one yet will say which side seized the laboratory, the de facto government, meaning the regulars, or the rebels, the Rapid Support Forces. The Gateway Pundit reports some vain speculation that General Daglow's Rapid Support Forces have the laboratory. Well, if so, that might cause concern indeed at WHO, because WHO is not known to cooperate with rebels. But I stayed up with this thing until 9:30 p.m. Eastern, and at the time I'm reciting this to you, I still don't know. Twitter user War Clandestine has already dropped a thread connecting this laboratory to some interesting background. Now, before I get to that, I want to shout out to a sponsor who can really help you through the economic storms to come. That sponsor is OurSilverLines.com. Do you feel like you're working harder for your money just to get by? You are not alone. The fluctuating economy, employment issues, and unexpected changes in life have left many families struggling over the past few years. Collecting gold and silver can help shield you against many of these challenges. But if you're like me many years ago, you don't know where or how to start. Our Silver Lines helps by connecting you with thousands of members who are learning the secrets to creating and protecting true wealth by collecting precious metals. Whether you just want to collect rare and unique coins or take advantage of the business opportunities this company provides, either way, they can help you learn to live an exceptional life. Visit OurSilverLines.com to learn how you can build a legacy for your future. And now, as I said, my good friend War Clandestine dropped a thread giving some interesting background that goes back to the Clinton administration. You might remember that they had their adventures in the Sudan too, with cruise missiles. I have links to 6 tweets by him, and I'm now going to transcribe, and as ever, I will bowdlerize at need. Let's talk about Sudan. In 1998, Bill Clinton launched 14 cruise missiles onto Sudan's largest pharmaceutical plant, falsely accused of making chemical weapons linked to Osama bin Laden, opening the door for the USAID, that's the United States Agency for International Development, and U.S. pharma companies, with the largest Sudanese manufacturer of malaria drugs and pharmaceuticals bombed into an oblivion. The U.S. Gov and their big pharma overlords established a foothold in Sudan and took over the supply of drugs to a country of over 46 million people. Do you see the conflict of interest? U.S. president owned by Big Pharma bombs the living daylights out of Big Pharma competitors in a foreign country, and then establishes U.S. government foothold in that country. U.S. pharma companies take over supply of drugs. Big Pharma bomb their competition by proxy. This follows the deep state modus operandi of creating catastrophes in war so they can take over amidst the chaos. 25 years later, USAID supplies Sudan with over $98 million in aid relating to the virus that shall remain nameless, and administered 1.2 million jabs. Money for Big Pharma. You all likely saw the WHO report from earlier today of a public Sudanese lab being taken over by fighters in the ongoing civil war between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary group RSF. That lab was housing cholera, polio, and measles. Was there any nefarious bioweapons research going on? I didn't find anything too out of the ordinary as of yet. But the NIH.gov are yanking pages affiliated with Sudan. NIH page on monkeys with Sudan Ebola virus treated successfully? Gone. Luckily, there isn't other reporting on the subject, and an odd connection jumped out. The story the US NIH are covering up on their government webpage is involving NIH-funded scientists and Arbutus Biopharma Corporation, a Canadian-based company. Arbutus Biopharma is currently in a lawsuit with Moderna, Pfizer, and BioNTech over U.S. patents on, come on now, you know what I'm going to say, immunizations against the virus that shall remain nameless. Arbutus CEO claims big tech stole their lipid nanoparticle delivery technology to mass manufacture the jabs. However, the main thing you should take away from this is that the US NIH have dangerous diseases at labs all over the world that they can get out any time, and they have repeatedly been compromised in war zones. Does the reward outweigh the risk? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Big Pharma and their subservient politicians will continue to put dangerous diseases in labs around the world, hoping they get out, so they can sell more drugs or shots and increase their stranglehold on the world. Illness isn't a bug, it's a feature. End of thread. In reply, someone gave war clandestine another name, BARDA, Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority. This other user asked war clandestine to go after that, and he said he would. 2 tweets in the description, both from the other gentleman, but between them, you can get the entire conversation, everything you need. Among other things, they noticed a connection with Metabiota. And where have we heard that before? Right, Ukraine. There's just one more thing, and I don't know what it means in light of everything else going on, but I think it bears mentioning here. Apparently, Ambassador Susan Rice has lost her position in the White House. I have a link in the description to a tweet by the account calling itself Amuse. Amuse's point here is that Ambassador Rice knows something about what's happening in the Sudan because she was directly involved in the decision not to evacuate anyone from that country. Now, is she really fired? Or, as I suspect, is the real disposition that the deep state has extracted her and prepared to ship her off to some home for retired agents? Maybe like The Village in the ITC television series, The Prisoner, that ran in 1967. Or is she just going to drop off the face of the earth and we'll never hear from her again? Stay tuned. And now my analysis. Again, note that WHO will not tell us which of the 2 warring factions in the Sudan has the laboratory. If they're declaring a great biological risk, that means one of 2 things. Either WHO's enemies have the laboratory and therefore WHO has no control of the situation, which no dictator can tolerate, or whose friends have it and are ready to release a germ or germs on command. The latter would make sense in light of the upcoming vote, May 31st, on the WHO Pandemic Treaty. Can anyone doubt that WHO plans to declare a pandemic the minute they have one world governing authority to act? This is a job for the JAG Corps of the American Patriotic Militia, such as it is. The particular element that needs to act is Judicial Watch. I've left a link in the description of their homepage. Someone must take immediate legal action with respect not only to those 16,000 Americans left stranded in someone else's war zone, but also to the administration's plans to enact this treaty without submitting it to the Senate. In the meantime, let every American contact his senators and representative and register his disapproval of the treaty and of the mishandling of the situation in the Sudan. Links to the description of the article, to Dr. Steve's video, to 3 tweets about the ceasefire, to that statement of condemnation for what that's worth, to 3 tweets about stranded Americans, to 1 about other nationals getting out, to 5 tweets about the seizure of the lab, to 6 tweets saying, "We've been messing around over there since the Clinton administration," to the suggestion someone gave War Clandestine about another line of research, to the tweet about Ambassador Rice no longer being in the White House, to the front page for Judicial Watch, to my Declarations of Truth Twitter account, and to Conservative News and Views. I've also left links to the awesome CNAV store. Scroll down near the bottom. I also left links to rsilverlines.com, as I also mentioned. You know already about how to like a video, turn on notifications, and leave a tip. On the end screen, I'm going to leave a subscribe link to my channel and links to Dr. Steve's video, the earlier video about the WHO Pandemic Treaty, and the one about the Fauci Pharma files, because I'd say that has become relevant also. This is Terry A. Hurlbut delivering another declaration of truth and reminding you to let the truth set you free.